My friends think you're a downgrade from my ex. It's better if you stay home, my fiancée said, after I asked why I wasn't invited to her friend's wedding. I nodded. And when she left, I canceled everything and packed her stuff. A few hours later, her mom called me yelling, "All right, Reddit, grab some popcorn and strap in. This is going to be intense. My name's Cole, 30 male. I'm a journeyman lineman for the regional power company. If you don't know what that means, I'm the guy who climbs 40-foot poles in the middle of an ice storm to get your lights back on. I'm the guy who works 16-hour shifts during hurricanes while everyone else is evacuating. I'm the guy who makes sure hospitals don't go dark and grandma's oxygen machine keeps running. It's not glamorous. The hours are brutal. The conditions are dangerous. But it pays well, and I'm good at it. I've been doing it for 8 years. I grew up in a small town about 2 hours north of here. Dad was a mechanic who worked on diesel engines until his back gave out. Mom was an ER nurse who worked nights so she could be home when we got off school. They taught me that you judge a man by what he does, not what he says. Show up. Work hard. Keep your word. Don't complain. Fix what's broken. I took that to heart. By 28, I owned my house outright. Paid cash. 3 bedrooms, decent yard, detached garage where I rebuilt motorcycles on weekends. I had 0 debt, a solid retirement account, and enough savings to weather a year without working. Then I met Blair. She was 26 when we crossed paths at a mutual friend's cookout. Beautiful without even trying. Brunette, green eyes, a laugh that made you want to keep saying stupid things just to hear it again. She worked as an events coordinator for a boutique hotel downtown, planned corporate retreats and wedding receptions. Had that polished professional thing going on. We talked for 3 hours that first night, standing by the fire pit while everyone else got loud and distracted. I asked for her number. She gave it to me without playing games. I like that. Seemed like she had her head on straight. What I didn't know was that she was 6 months out of a 2-year relationship with a guy named Preston. Preston was the kind of guy who wore boat shoes without socks and talked about his personal brand. He came from old money, worked at his daddy's investment firm, and treated women like accessories to swap out when he got bored. He'd cheated on Blair repeatedly, gaslit her when she confronted him, then dumped her when she finally demanded accountability. Said she was too needy, too dramatic, not sophisticated enough for his circle. The breakup wrecked her confidence and left her finances in ruins because she'd been covering his lifestyle while he pocketed his trust fund distributions. Blair was a mess when I met her. She just hid it well. Underneath that put-together exterior was a woman with maxed-out credit cards totaling about $19,000, a car payment she could barely make, and a self-esteem that had been stomped flat by a trust fund baby with a Napoleon complex. She was living in a cramped studio apartment she could barely afford, trying to look successful while drowning in debt. I didn't know any of that at first. I just knew I liked her. And apparently she liked me too. Or at least, she liked what I could do for her. Our first year together was great. Really great. She seemed genuinely into me. She'd come to my house on weekends and watch me work on bikes in the garage, asking questions about the engines even though I could tell she didn't care about motorcycles. She'd pack me lunches when I had early shifts. Little notes tucked inside. She met my parents and charmed them completely. My mom loved her. My dad said she seemed like good people. I trusted their judgment. When she told me about her debt, about 3 months in, I didn't run, didn't judge. I sat down with her at my kitchen table and made a plan. I paid off her credit cards in one shot, refinanced her car loan into my name to get her a better rate since her credit was trashed, helped her build a budget that actually worked. Within 8 months, she was debt-free for the first time in her adult life. I didn't hold it over her. That's not why I did it. I did it because I loved her, and I wanted us to have a solid foundation. When you're building something together, you don't keep score. At least, that's what I thought. After a year of dating, she moved into my house. Made sense. Her lease was up. I had the space. And she was spending most nights at my place anyway. She gave up her studio, packed her things into my truck, and moved in. She didn't pay rent. I didn't ask her to. The house was paid off. What was I going to do? Charge her to live with me? She covered groceries sometimes. Split the utilities. Handled the streaming subscription since I didn't care about that stuff. It worked. 6 months after she moved in, I proposed. A hike to her favorite overlook at sunset. I'd carried that ring in my pocket for 2 weeks waiting for the right moment. She cried, said yes, told me I was everything she'd ever wanted. I thought I'd found my person. That's when things started to shift. The engagement seemed to flip a switch in Blair's brain. It was subtle at first. Little things I could explain away. She started caring more about the wedding than about us. Every conversation became about venues and flowers and color schemes and seating charts. I'd come home from a 12-hour shift covered in mud and sweat, and she'd shove a tablet in my face asking me to choose between two shades of white that looked identical to my fried eyes. I'd say they looked the same. She'd get frustrated. Say I wasn't taking this seriously. The wedding planning kicked into high gear about 2 months after the engagement. Blair found a venue she loved, some converted barn outside the city that charged more per hour than I made in a week. We put down a deposit, $5,000 from me, matched by her parents who insisted on contributing. Her dad Gerald seemed happy to chip in. Her mom Meredith acted like she was doing us a favor by allowing her money to touch our peasant wedding. The caterer, the florist, the photographer, all came next. Her parents covered about $8,000 total. I covered the rest. We had a date set for the following spring, 10 months out. Then her friends got involved. Specifically, a duo I came to call the Poison Twins, Kendall and Aubrey. They'd been Blair's friends since college, part of some sorority sisterhood thing that apparently created bonds stronger than common sense. They both absolutely hated me from day one, and they didn't bother hiding it. Kendall was a real estate agent who sold overpriced condos to tech bros and thought that made her a mogul. She drove a BMW that was definitely leased and dressed like she was on her way to a yacht party. Aubrey worked in pharmaceutical sales and had the personality of a root canal, fake as anything. The first time I met them, at some overpriced lounge downtown, Kendall looked me up and down and said, "So you're the electrician Blair's been telling us about." I corrected her. Said I was a lineman. She laughed, this high-pitched fake laugh that made my skin crawl, and said, "Same thing, right? You both play with wires." I let it go because Blair was sitting right there, and I didn't want to make a scene. Looking back, I should have made a scene. I should have told Kendall that the difference between a lineman and an electrician is like the difference between a real estate agent and someone who actually builds the houses. But I kept my mouth shut, tried to be the bigger person. That was my first mistake. Over the next few months, those two worked on Blair like termites on wood. Every time she came back from brunch with them, and there was always brunch, she was a little more distant, a little more critical, a little more focused on what I didn't have instead of what I did. She started making comments about my job, asked if I'd ever thought about management, something with normal hours and clean clothes. I told her I liked what I did. I was good at it. The pay was excellent. The pension was solid. She sighed and said she knew, but it would be nice to have a husband who didn't smell like transformer oil and come home looking like he'd lost a fight with a mud pit. Then came the comparisons. She'd mentioned how Kendall's boyfriend just made partner at his law firm, how Aubrey's fiancé was taking her to Santorini for their engagement photos, how Preston, oh yeah, she started bringing him up again. Preston just bought a condo downtown, in that new building with the rooftop pool. Wasn't that nice for him? I'd grunt and say good for him. But inside, I was keeping track. My buddy Deacon saw it happening before I did. Deacon's been my best friend since high school. We'd worked summer jobs together, got into trouble together, grew up together. He's a welder now, owns his own fabrication shop, looks like a biker with the beard and the tattoos, talks like a philosophy professor when he's had enough coffee, and has absolutely zero filter. He'd been skeptical of Blair from the start, called her a fixer-upper when I first introduced them, but he kept his mouth shut because he respected my choices. Deacon met the Poison Twins exactly once. I'd made the mistake of organizing a dinner with both friend groups, thinking everyone would get along. Within 20 minutes, Kendall had asked Deacon what kind of car he drove. He said a truck. She asked what year. He said it runs. She didn't know what to do with that. Aubrey tried to ask him about his investment strategy. He said his strategy was not being broke. They stopped talking to him after that and spent the rest of the night whispering to Blair. On the drive home, Deacon looked at me and said, "Man, those two are going to be a problem." I told him they were harmless. He shook his head. "Nah, they're scorekeepers. Everything's a competition. And right now, they're looking at Blair and wondering why she's not winning." I didn't get what he meant at the time. About 3 months before everything blew up, Deacon and I were fishing at his cabin up north. Just the two of us, some rods, a cooler full of sandwiches and sodas. It was one of those perfect October days where the air smells like wood smoke, and the fish are actually biting. We'd been out there since dawn, not talking much, just enjoying the quiet. Around noon, Deacon cracked open a drink, stared at the water for a long time, and finally said, "You know your girl's changing, right?" "Well, she's just stressing about the wedding. Everyone does." He shook his head slowly. "Nah, man. Stress makes you tired. Snappy, maybe. Whatever's going on with her is something else. She looks at you like you're a problem she's got to figure out instead of someone she actually wants to be with." I told him he was being paranoid, that he'd never liked her anyway. He cast his line out into the water. Watched it sink. I liked who she was when you met her. But this version's got an audience, and you're not it, man. I should have listened. I didn't. Fast forward to when things imploded. It was our mutual friends. Danielle and her fiancé Trevor were getting married at some fancy venue outside the city. Blair had been friends with Danielle since college, part of the same social circle that included the Poison twins. I'd known Trevor through work. He was a line foreman who'd moved up to management a few years back. We'd grabbed food together a few times. Good guy. Down to earth. I was looking forward to the wedding. Thought it might be good for Blair and me. Remind us what we were working toward. I'd rented a nice tux. Got a fresh haircut. 4 days before the wedding, I came home from a rough shift. We'd had a transformer blow during an ice storm, and I'd spent 9 hours in a bucket truck trying to restore power to a nursing home full of elderly folks with no heat. 2 of them had been taken to the hospital for hypothermia before we got the juice back on. I was exhausted, dehydrated, and carrying about 10 pounds of dried sweat and dirt on my skin. I wanted a shower and sleep. What I got was Blair sitting on the couch with that look on her face. I dropped my gear bag by the door and asked what was wrong. "We need to talk," she said flatly. She started with the setup, the long, winding excuse before the actual point. Danielle's wedding, the guest list, how tight things were, how the venue had capacity limits, how there were some concerns from certain people about the vibe of the reception. I had no idea what she was talking about. I'd met most of these people. They seemed fine. "Blair, just get to the point," I said. She took a deep breath. "Kendall and Aubrey think it would be better if you didn't come. It would be uncomfortable. Also, Preston will be there, and it might get awkward." I stared at her for a long moment. "Excuse me. As you heard, Cole, I asked why Preston being there had anything to do with me going. She said it was complicated. Her friends thought that having both of us there might cause tension, that Preston was more part of their social circle, and it would be weird to have her current fiancé around when everyone knew her ex better. So your solution to avoiding drama," I said, keeping my voice flat, "is to uninvite your fiancé to a wedding so your ex-boyfriend can feel comfortable?" She got defensive right away. "You're twisting my words. It's not about Preston. It's about the group dynamic. My friends are worried you won't fit in with the other guests, and you might feel out of place. You might not have anything to talk about with people there," she finished. And honestly, I think they're right. These aren't your kind of people, Cole. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about protecting my feelings or saving me from awkward small talk. This was about her being embarrassed by me. I asked her straight up, "Are you ashamed of me?" She hesitated. "No, of course not. My friends just think Preston is a better fit for these kinds of events." "Yeah, interesting. What? Are you mad now?" "Nope. Thanks for making things clear. You don't have to take it personally." "Really? How do you exactly want me to take it? Because from what I just heard, you're ashamed of showing up with your own fiancé." "I am not. Stop twisting my words. I'm not stupid, Blair. You just told me I'm not good enough for your friends." "God, you're being so dramatic now." "Yeah, now I'm being dramatic. You know what?" Her voice snapped. "Kendall said you're a downgrade from Preston, and Aubrey thinks the same. So yes, of course I am embarrassed," she blurted out. Then she caught herself, tried to walk it back. "I mean, okay, look, it came out wrong. I see." I cut her off. "Understood." And she looked at the floor, then back at me. "Cole, I didn't mean to." "Don't," I said. "I understand." She looked relieved. Thought I was going to roll over and accept being benched like some embarrassing secret. She smiled weakly and said she knew I'd understand. Said I was so practical. That's what she loved about me. I said sure. Then I walked past her toward the bedroom. "Wait, where are you going?" She followed me down the hall, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "Cole, what are you doing?" I pulled a suitcase from the closet and started opening her dresser drawers. "Are you kidding me right now?" she repeated, her voice getting louder. I stopped, set the suitcase down, looked at her. "You've got until Thursday," I said. "I'll put it in writing tonight. If you make this difficult, I'll have cops here for the removal." She actually laughed. "You're overreacting. Stop being so dramatic. You can't just kick me out. This is my house. You're not on any lease. You moved in as my guest, and now I'm asking you to leave." I kept my voice flat. "You have until Thursday evening." The color drained from her face. "Are you breaking up with me?" "Yes. You can stay in the guest room tonight if you need to, but I want you out by Thursday evening." She started crying. "You're being so cruel. It's all a misunderstanding. Please don't do this." "Enough." I walked to my desk, grabbed a notepad, and wrote out a simple notice. Date, her name, Thursday evening to vacate. My signature. I handed it to her. There's your written notice. She grabbed my arm, asked me to stop, said we could talk about this. I pulled my arm back. Nothing to talk about. That's when I heard the front door open. Deacon's voice came from down the hall. Yo, Cole, I brought back that torque wrench. You home? Perfect timing. We had standing plans for him to drop by that evening so we could work on my bike. He walked into the bedroom doorway, took one look at the scene, Blair crying, me standing there with my arms crossed, and his face shifted from confusion to understanding. Whoa, what did I miss? He asked. I gave him the short version. Deacon looked at the paper in Blair's hand. That the notice? Yep, you're the witness. Thursday. He nodded slowly. Clean. Blair spent the next hour going back and forth between crying, bargaining, and threatening to call the cops. Deacon calmly told her she could call whoever she wanted. The notice was legal. The timeline was reasonable. She had no lease, no tenant agreement, nothing. She'd moved in as a girlfriend, not a tenant. Different rules. She called Kendall, put her on speaker like she was calling for backup. Kendall started screeching about how I was a psycho, how Blair should call the police right now, how this was abusive behavior. Deacon took the phone out of Blair's hand, put it to his ear, and said, Hey, this is Deacon. She's got until Thursday to move out. If you want to help, come get her. Otherwise, quit yelling. He hung up and handed the phone back. The ring was next. Blair had left it on the bathroom counter when she'd showered that morning. I walked to the bathroom, grabbed the ring box, and came back. This comes off too, I said. Engagement's over. Ring goes back to the jeweler. She lunged for it. I stepped back. $8,000. Not yours anymore. It's my ring. You gave it to me. I'm returning it tomorrow. She called me a monster. Deacon shrugged and said, He gave you until Thursday. That's pretty reasonable. She didn't stay in the guest room. She called her parents around 10 p.m. and asked for a ride. Gerald showed up around midnight. We talked for minutes and I told him what happened. He looked exhausted, nodded, then helped her load what she could fit into the SUV and left. Over the next 2 days, she came back twice with her mom to get more stuff. I stayed out of the way. Let them take whatever was hers. Didn't argue, didn't engage, didn't say a word. Meredith glared at me the whole time. Gerald came once, on the second day. He just looked tired. When they were loading the last of the boxes, he walked over to me. For what it's worth, he said quietly, so Meredith couldn't hear. I get it. I would have done the same thing. I nodded. Didn't know what to say to that. He shook my hand, got in the car, and left. By Thursday evening, she was out. The house was quiet. Felt bigger somehow, even though nothing had actually changed. Blair stood at the end of my driveway during that last trip and told me I was going to regret this, that I'd blown my one chance at happiness. I didn't say anything, just watched her get in the car. Deacon came by that night, sat on my porch with 2 drinks, handed me one as the sun went down. You good? He asked. Yeah, I said. I'm good. The next morning I got to work. Not line work, administrative destruction. First, the wedding vendors. I'd paid the deposits. My name was on the contracts. One by one, I called them. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the DJ, the photographer. I explained that the wedding was canceled. Most of them were sympathetic. A few tried to talk me into postponing instead of canceling outright. I told them there was nothing to postpone. The relationship was over. I signed the cancellation forms they emailed me, accepted the partial refunds were available, and crossed each one off my list. Saved every confirmation email in a folder. Just in case. The deposits her parents had contributed? Gone. Non-refundable. About $8,000 up in smoke because their daughter couldn't keep her mouth shut about what her friends really thought of me. That wasn't my problem. I hadn't asked them to contribute. They'd insisted. Meredith had made a big show of it, talking about family tradition and how important it was for the bride's family to participate. Meredith called me the next afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. The third time, I picked up just to get it over with. She was furious, yelling, demanded to know what I thought I was doing, said I had no right to cancel everything without asking them first, said I'd humiliated their family, said Gerald had worked overtime to contribute to this wedding, that they dipped into savings, and now because of my ego, because I couldn't handle a little criticism, they were going to lose everything. I told her to ask Blair why she'd agreed to uninvite me from a wedding so her cheating ex could feel comfortable. Then I told her to have a nice day and hung up. She tried calling back 4 more times. I blocked the number. Next, the car. The loan was in my name. Title was in my name. Insurance was in my name. I texted Blair once. Car's in my name. You have until Friday to get your stuff out of it. After that, I'm taking it. She responded with a wall of text I didn't read. I muted the conversation. Friday came, she hadn't touched it, so I listed it on Facebook Marketplace. Had 3 offers by Saturday morning. Met a guy in a grocery store parking lot that afternoon. Signed the title over, deposited the check, paid off the remaining loan balance, pocketed the difference, done. Then came the petty part. The part that made Deacon nearly spit out his coffee when I told him. We'd had a wedding website, one of those custom domains where you post your story, your registry, your timeline, directions to the venue. Blair had picked the template. She'd written the copy. She'd uploaded the photos. But I'd paid for the hosting, and the account was in my name. She'd never bothered to get the login info because that was tech stuff, and tech stuff was my department. I didn't delete the site. I didn't post anything mean. I just changed the homepage banner from Blair, June 14th, to event canceled in big block letters. Removed all the other content. Left the URL active so anyone who'd bookmarked it or had it in their emails would see exactly 2 words when they clicked. Event canceled. No explanation, no drama. Just 2 words that told everyone everything they needed to know. Blair had shared that link everywhere. It was in her email signature at work. She'd texted it to every relative. She'd put it in the group chat with her college friends. And now, when any of those people clicked it, they got the update without me having to say a word. When Deacon saw it, he just nodded. I like this. Let the rumor mill do all the work. Within 24 hours, people started asking questions. Blair's friends noticed. They reached out to her. She had to explain over and over what happened. Each time she told the story, she had to admit the engagement was off. Each time she admitted it, she had to decide how much truth to include. But Danielle saw the website before anyone else did. She texted me that same afternoon, hours after I'd changed it. Asked if what she'd heard was true. I told her the short version, kept it factual, no spin. That Blair had uninvited me because Kendall and Aubrey thought I was a downgrade from Preston. That she had agreed with them. That I'd ended the engagement because of it. Danielle was horrified. She told me Kendall had volunteered to help with the guest list as a favor, and Danielle had never approved cutting my invitation. She'd assumed I was coming. Trevor had been expecting me. She apologized a bunch, said she felt terrible, said she'd always thought Blair and I were good. She also said she was going to have words with Kendall at the rehearsal dinner. Those words apparently happened in front of everyone. Trevor gave me the play-by-play via text in real time. Danielle confronted Kendall in front of everybody, asked why she'd taken it upon herself to decide who could come to her wedding. Kendall tried to play innocent, said she was just trying to help, said she thought she was doing what Danielle would want. Danielle wasn't buying it. She asked Kendall directly if she'd told Blair to uninvite me because of Preston. Kendall couldn't deny it. The whole room went quiet. Danielle told Kendall and Aubrey they were no longer in the wedding party, that they could come to the ceremony as regular guests if they wanted, but they weren't standing up with her. They weren't giving toasts. They weren't in the photos. They left. Made a huge scene on the way out. Aubrey knocked over a centerpiece. Kendall called Danielle ungrateful and dramatic. The whole restaurant watched them storm out like toddlers who didn't get their way. Preston, who was still somehow invited, sat there looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Trevor said he left early and didn't come to the actual wedding. The ceremony went on without the Poison twins. Trevor said it was beautiful. Danielle looked happy. They sent me a piece of cake in a little box with a note that said, "Sorry for the drama. You deserved better." Deacon and I ate the cake while watching the game that Sunday. It was excellent cake. Over the next few days, the full story spread. Blair created a backup Instagram account and started posting vague stuff about betrayal and toxic masculinity and how some people show their true colors when you need them most. The comments were a mix of supportive friends who didn't know the full story and confused people asking what happened. Her friends rallied around her at first. Kendall posted a long rant about how Blair had dodged a bullet, how some men can't handle strong women, how this was actually a blessing in disguise. Aubrey shared it with fire emojis. But once word got out about what really happened at the rehearsal dinner, the narrative shifted. I didn't have to do anything else. The rumor mill handled the rest. Blair showed up at my job site 4 days after Danielle's wedding. She'd waited at the yard that morning, watched my crew load up, then followed my truck to the site. I didn't notice her tailing us. Too focused on the day ahead. I was 50 feet up a pole in a residential neighborhood, replacing a crossarm that had been damaged in a storm. I was sweating through my layers from the climb, breath fogging in the cold, and I was focused on not dying when I heard the commotion below. My crew lead, a guy named Raphael, who'd been doing this job longer than I'd been alive, radioed up and asked if I knew the woman losing her mind next to my truck. I looked down, Saw her car parked illegally in the work zone. Saw her pacing. I told Raphael, yeah, unfortunately. He asked if I wanted him to handle it. I said I'd deal with it, and finished the connection I was working on. Secured my tools. Climbed down the pole one careful step at a time. Blair was waiting next to my truck when I reached the ground. She looked rough, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, yoga pants, and a wrinkled t-shirt. She didn't wait for me to unclip my harness. "You humiliated me," she said, her voice cracking. "You wrecked my reputation. You cost my parents thousands of dollars. You ruined my friendships. Are you happy now?" I took off my hat, set it in the truck bed. Didn't say anything. She lost it. Started screaming about how she'd given me everything. How she'd lowered herself to be with someone like me. How her friends had warned her from the beginning that I wasn't good enough and she'd defended me anyway. Raphael and the rest of my crew suddenly got very interested in checking equipment across the street, but I knew they were listening. I waited until she ran out of steam. Then I asked when exactly she'd defended me. She said it wasn't like that she'd been under pressure, that Kendall and Aubrey had been in her ear constantly for months, telling her she could do better, telling her Preston was still interested. She said Preston had reached out a few times, said he missed her, said he'd made a mistake letting her go, said she'd been confused. I asked if she'd texted him back. She hesitated. "Yeah," I said. "That's what I thought." She said nothing happened, that it was just talking, old friends catching up, closure. She said she hadn't done anything wrong. I didn't argue with her, didn't see the point. She started crying again, said she'd made a mistake, that she loved me, that she wanted to fix this, that she'd do anything, that her parents were furious with her, that Kendall and Aubrey had dropped her, that she had nothing left. I looked at her for a long time. This woman I'd planned to marry. This woman who'd looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't good enough. "I'm not mad anymore," I said. "I was. For about 12 hours. Then I realized you showed me who you are before I married you. That's worth something." She said I was being harsh. "I'm just being honest." She asked if there was any chance, any way to fix this. Anything. I held up my hands. Let her see the calluses, the scars, the dirt that never fully washes out. "These hands paid off your debts, put a ring on your finger, and you told your friends they weren't good enough to show up at a wedding." I dropped my hands. "We're done." She stood there for a moment, tears running down her face. Then she turned and walked back to her car, sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes without moving. Then she drove away. Raphael walked over, handed me a bottle of water. Didn't say anything. I drank the water and got back to work. 2 months later, life had gotten back to something like normal. My normal, anyway. The house felt different with her gone. Quieter, obviously, but also cleaner. I rearranged the furniture, took down some of the decorations she'd picked out, put up a few things I actually liked, made the place feel like mine again, because it was. I'd gotten the refund on the engagement ring. $8,000 back in my pocket, minus a small restocking fee. The jeweler didn't even ask why. Said he'd seen it before. Young couples, big dreams, reality hits. He processed the return and wished me luck. I used the money to buy a hydraulic lift for my garage. Deacon and I spent a whole weekend installing it, complaining and laughing and nearly crushing his hand twice. But we got it done. And now I could work on motorcycles without wrecking my back. I bought a second project bike just to fill the space. A 1976 Honda CB 750 that needed a complete overhaul. Perfect. Work was steady. The guys on my crew had heard the story by now. They didn't pry, just cracked jokes and moved on. Raphael told me his first wife left him for a car salesman. Said it was the best thing that ever happened to him because his second wife was twice the woman and half the headache. I appreciated that. My parents took the news better than I expected. Mom was angry at first. She'd really liked her. Or she'd liked who she thought she was. Dad just shook his head and said, "Better to find out now than 10 years in with kids." He wasn't wrong. They invited me over for dinner every Sunday for a month straight. Didn't push. Just made sure I wasn't alone. Deacon came over most weekends. We'd fish, work on bikes, watch games, grill steaks that Blair would have complained were too rare. He'd started dating a nurse named Elena he met at a blood drive. She was actually cool. Didn't have that fake nice thing going on. She even helped me bleed the brakes on the Honda once, said her dad was a mechanic and she missed working with her hands. I told Deacon to hang on to that one. As for Blair, I heard pieces through the grapevine. Trevor kept me updated even though I told him he didn't have to. She'd moved back in with her parents, had no choice. She couldn't afford rent anywhere without my money behind her, and she hadn't saved a dime the entire time we were together. Why would she? I'd covered everything. Meredith was furious, apparently. Kept reminding Blair how much money they'd lost on deposits. Gerald was quieter about it, but that was almost worse. He just looked disappointed. Trevor said he'd run into Gerald at the hardware store a few weeks later, and Gerald had shaken his head and said, "I liked that kid. She really screwed up." After I sold the car, Blair was stuck driving her mom's old sedan, a 12-year-old Camry with a dent in the rear bumper and no working AC, a car she would have made fun of a year ago. Kendall and Aubrey didn't drop her right away. At first, they just got busy, couldn't make brunch, had other plans. The slow fade. Then after the rehearsal dinner blow-up, the fade turned into a full block. They blamed Blair for the whole thing, said she shouldn't have told me about the uninvite. They found a replacement for their brunch group within a month, some girl from their Pilates class. Blair found out through Instagram. The hotel job got rocky. Trevor heard from Danielle that Blair had been struggling at work, showing up late, missing deadlines. They moved her off the big events, gave her smaller accounts. About 3 months later, she left to pursue other opportunities. I'm guessing they gave her the choice to quit or get fired. She tried reaching out through mutual friends a few times, trying to set up a second chance. People mostly just didn't respond. Danielle told her she'd had her chance. I didn't feel sorry for her. She made her choices. She gets to live with them. I hope she finds whatever she thinks she deserves. She's not my problem anymore. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.